Hello, Victorian Literature Vlog. It's Sarah Louise. I must apologize for not keeping up with you as planned. I have been very busy trying to keep up with a 5-course semester, and I'm still not quite there yet. But I thought that I would take a break from my studies because as I checked my email, I realized it has been swarmed since my first entry. And so what I think has happened is that some people watched my vlog and they thought, for whatever reason, that I was a Victorian literature advice column. Probably because I'm so wise and knowledgeable. I can completely understand how that would happen. But yeah, these letters, there's a couple of them and they seem rather desperate, so I thought that I would present them to you and articulate a response, and I felt as though this would be useful in case anyone else is having problems like this in their life. So yeah, without further ado, I will read the first one. Ahem, very serious subject matter. Dear Sarah Louise, it would seem that in an act of passion I have strangled my lover with her own hair. It seemed like a pretty good idea at the time, but I am getting a little anxious. We have been sitting here together, and all night we have not yet stirred, and yet God has not said a word. Do I have anything to be concerned about? What do I do? Please help me, Sarah Louise. You are my only hope. Signed, Relatively Nervous. Dear Relatively Nervous, I am guessing you have already tried first aid with no avail. I would suppose all you have left to do is convince yourself that this is what your lover wanted in attempts to make yourself feel better about it. Also, I would consider ditching the body. Holding your lover's corpse is a little bit creepy and probably won't look good if God sends the cops. If all else fails, write a poem about it. Yours truly, Sarah Louise. And you know, Relatively Nervous, I really feel as though you should write a poem about these events. It could be rather moving. It would make a very good dramatic monologue. Anyways, onwards to the second desperate advice seeker. Dear Sarah Louise, I have recently taken to a rather adequate, fairly attractive, reasonably intelligent young woman. I know also that she is indeed taken to me, as I have courted another woman in her midst, and she has appeared slightly jealous. In fact, she is so adequate that I have proposed to her. I really feel as though we could start a life together. However, I have just one issue. I have kept my former wife locked up in my attic for quite some time now, the reason being that she is completely mad and needs to be confined. Recently, she has set my bed on fire, attacked a guest of mine, and just the other night broke into my fiancé's room and ripped her wedding veil in half. So far, I have gotten by, insisting that these were drunken acts by a servant in the household, and treating my lover as though she is crazy. However, I fear that one day I will have to tell her the truth. How can I continue to avoid this? Signed, Rochester. Dear Rochester, I admire that you have used your real name in this letter for help, considering your dishonest nature, as I am not creative enough to think of one for you in your desperate situation. What I suggest is completely avoiding the situation altogether. It is highly important that you neglect to tell your fiancé the truth at all costs. Avoid it until the last possible moment, when you are on the altar. Then, perhaps your father-in-law will coincidentally show up at your ceremony, rendering you unable to remarry as you have avoided to take care of your former marriage properly. That way, someone else gets to tell her. She sounds like an adequate enough person that she will still marry you eventually anyways. Yours sincerely, Sarah Louise. One more. Dear Sarah Louise, I am in a state of menacing torment and deep sorrow. The love of my life has chosen to marry another. I cannot contain my sadness, and I am nothing without her. What do you suggest I do, Sarah Louise? Also, I think I might be a werewolf. Signed, Brooding in Sorrow. Dear Brooding in Sorrow, perhaps you might consider running off and disappearing for a long while. This may lead your lover to realize how thoroughly she has broken your heart and also make her completely miserable. While you are away, also consider mysteriously obtaining a large sum of money. When you have had enough of being away, you should definitely show up to the abode of your former lover dressed in a nice suit and play the part of a homewrecker. If this does not seem to stir the household up enough, does her husband have a hot sister? If so, you should surely act on this to get a rise out of him and make the woman who broke your heart jealous. As for the werewolf thing, that is a little weird. I've heard that in medieval times, converting to Christianity was one way to get rid of their werewolf form. But who the hell wants to do that? I say, accept yourself for who you are. Yours truly, Sarah Louise. So I'm hoping that that has helped our advice seekers as well as my viewers. And I am hoping that I will be able to update the Victorian literature video blog relatively soon again. And I hope that everyone is having a beautiful day. And yes, those are real insects behind me in frames. Pretty cool. Anyways, I must depart.